Hello and welcome to TelecomTV. I'm Martin Warwick. We're in trendy Shoreditch in the City of London at the Internet of Insurance event and conference. And I'm talking with Sabine Vanderlinden, who is the Managing Director for Startupbootcamp Insurtech. Sabine, welcome. We were talking off camera about the fact you've just come back from holiday, so hard luck for getting this for your first thing back, but nonetheless. Good to meet you. Thanks for talking to us. Tell us first of all about the state of the insurance industry from your perspective. We know that it's a very traditional, very staid, very old-fashioned and very venerable institution, been going in the UK for several hundred years. And for that reason, if nothing else, it's conservative, it's resistant to change, etc. But of course technology is having its effect on the insurance industry just as everything else, and it's being forced to change. So tell us, I mean, Startup Bootcamp sounds pretty aggressive to start with.
Yes, well, when you look at Startup Bootcamp, the whole purpose of the work we are doing is to work with corporate organizations to help them innovate. And our approach is to help them innovate by working with startups. So what we do, every year we go and scan the world for 10 promising startups with the help of our partners, corporate partners, and we help those startups achieve in 3 months what would take them 12 to 18 months to achieve on their own. Now, the key thing is the acceleration. So the bootcamp is a real bootcamp where startups have literally to learn to design a business, to build a minimum viable product. I'm sure you've heard some of those lean methodology terminology, and sell. Sell to investors, to the press, to customers. I already mentioned investor, but they start with angel investors, to the regulators as well, to actually demonstrate that they have sustainable businesses. And corporates get involved in that process, first maybe as observers, because many of them have never done that before. They have whole processes, whole techniques to innovation. Innovation can take months and years rather than weeks. So they learn to observe startups and the way they go about ideating and putting things together. So a big part is the observation, but when they observe, they actually realize that they may want to partner with those startups and involve the startups in their operations and then maybe invest in them.
Okay, now let's talk about the startups a little more. These companies you find, or they come to you, I don't know, you can tell us that, and they come with an idea, an original idea, and your job is to what? To sieve this, to look at it, see whether it's potentially viable, and then put them through hell to get it out into the market fairly quickly.
Exactly. So we are going to start again in July to go and literally scan the world for new startups. But when you look at the process we went through last year, we started with the corporates and our partners and asked them, what are your problems? What are the big things you are trying to achieve within your business, and how would you go about it? And then we go and look for startups. So we talked to 1,300 startups last year, and then we got application for over 250 startups. And I also take a plane and go to various locations and talk to them. So I probably talk directly to 100 startups. And what we do is we look at 4 things, whether what they have to offer is timely, because having a solution that no one wants is probably not the best. Then we spend a lot of time around the founding team, whether they have the skills, the leadership skill, entrepreneurship skills, but also the skill to execute, because at the end of the day you can have the greatest idea. If you can't execute it, well, it's worthless. Then we go into the concept, the technology, what they already have on the shelf, and look at whether it's something, the digital technology and digital components they have put together is relevant for the market, and whether, by having the right skill set, surrounding them, they could develop something really, really sustainable for the marketplace. And that lastly is how they are managing money. Are they, bootstrapping, whether they've received money from somebody. Usually we like, founders who have put a little bit of their money because they feel the pain, but also how they're spending cash and what is going to be the business plan for the future. So we combine all this together as part of our interview process. We're looking at the business plan or, the business model canvas work they may have already done. And then we take them through our own funnel to actually identify first 50 top startups, which we then start sharing with our partners. And so this is what we found, and I think this is the la crème de la crème. And then we reduce that to 20. Those startups are then invited to come to visit us in London, in our offices, during 3 days of really, really tough grilling, I would say. And then we select the 10. And the 10 startups are selected by the corporate partners we have on our program, but also the mentors and investors who are involved in the program. And then they come into the program to be accelerated.
It's very interesting and very sensible, I might say so. Obviously, you're not just trawling out there and looking for innovation, you're looking for innovation which is a solution to a problem that's been articulated by the insurance companies themselves. So they're saying, we have a problem here, we need this, and you help provide it.
Yes. So when you look at one aspect, innovation or disruption, I would say at the moment our goal is really about driving innovation, because actually a lot of, I would say 80% of startups actually wants to collaborate with corporate insurers. Their goal is really to bring solutions to disrupt that value chain. And I use disrupt the value chain in small commas. But when you look at really disruptors, organizations like Uber or Airbnb who actually do not want to work with the incumbent, or an Oscar who actually wants to become underwriters on their own, those companies probably do not need us. And so we are just mindful that when we talk about disruption, the way we look at it might be around changing the culture of a corporate by leveraging amazing innovation coming from bright thinker in the industry.
You led me very nicely onto my penultimate question to you, which is this. You said that change can be difficult to manage and difficult to put in place to begin with. And what has been found in many vertical organisations as a result of the emergence of the Internet of Things and the new technologies and 5G and so on is that many organisations are very capable technically of doing it, but are resistant organisationally and politically to that change, and find it very, very difficult to do. They prefer the status quo, even though the status quo is dangerous because of being undermined. They prefer that status quo to any possibility of change. How do you mix oil and water? How do you make that nice emulsion that, rather than having the whole thing separate and the trouble between the two?
So it's an interesting question. So one aspect of the way we work is that when the program starts in January, so the startup have been accepted and they are in the bootcamp, our partners have a choice to bring with us what we call executive in residence, and they work with us for 3 months in our offices for 3 to 4 days. And those people are probably the early adopters or the shakers in their own companies. And what they are doing is observe the techniques, but every week they go back to their organization, the functional units or managing directors, to say, first, I think you need to work with that startup. I think it can do something for your business, but also I think if we work with those organizations, we can learn a lot. So at the same time, they are learning new techniques that they can bring back home to actually start shaking the big tank, let's say. Another approach is we organize actually events for our corporate partners. That is off program. So when you look at the bootcamp itself, it runs between January and April. And after April, we organize activities for the corporate partner to become a bit more nimble in the way they adapt to the changing landscape. And so some of the things we do is roundtables, but also we welcome big speakers in the industry to come and actually share the techniques they have developed. So for instance, Alex Alston-Walder who developed Strategizer came and organized and delivered a 2 hours workshop for partners, but also mentors, where people had to actually design in 2 hours a new business model. And I think they realized that actually they probably have the skill set, they don't deploy it in the right way in-house. And a lot of the partners who came to that workshop, I think, went back with new tools to actually help those their people get inspired in the way they do things. Lastly, we also help our partners maybe set up new operating unit where they just do digital or they just look at innovation as something they need to take seriously and may actually have to take out of their core business to operationalize and actually make this a bit more fluid within their organizations. Some of them actually knows that they actually have probably to set up a unit where there are 3 people with their own budget and where they can make their own decisions. And we'll see more and more innovation lab or innovation team who actually get a budget to do the things much faster. So you see different techniques actually being deployed to actually make that happen within corporate environments.
Final question to you as promised. Have you had any notable successes yet that you can tell us about?
Well, I would say out of the 10 startups we had accepted on our program, 9 could make it to London. So we had a challenge with one African startup who I'm going to get into the program next year. But when you look at the 9 startups we had on the program, so claims transformation, driving customer experience from the claims environment to make that truly digital. So one of our startups called Right in Them is doing amazingly in working with a number of insurers. And funny enough, they seem to have much more traction in the US than they have in the UK, which is fascinating sometimes. But a few US insurers have found out about them, and they are really keen to have them transform their environment. Then we have a couple of other startups which are around the connected health area, who are actually working very closely with reinsurers. Funny enough, insurers realize that the data that they can acquire from the health propositions could help them shape better solutions, either for their insured customers or for the market as a whole, I guess. And lastly, I would say our connected home propositions and startups. Actually, one of them just called me last week and said, I'm off to the States as well. It seems that we have quite a lot of demand over there. So they are in Boston this week. So we have quite a lot of success. And I think the time was right for Internet of Things or the big data combined together. When we reviewed all the startups we talked to last year, 64% focused on the customer engagements, 50% on the Internet of Things, and the other 45% on big data. And those were not mutually exclusive, just to show that actually the startups we talked to knew that that was a big thing probably for this year.
Absolutely fascinating and very different, and best of luck with it. Sounds like you're doing very well. Sabine Vanderlinden, thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you, Martin.